Greetings, Internet people. Ranting Ramsey here, and welcome to another edition of the Rant Request. Today we are talking about distracted driving, and this was something I was actually going to do a rant about eventually anyway. But then Psycho Kitten 67 sent me a rant request to do said topic, and so I said, sure, why not? I'll bump it over, no big deal. And I've actually got really strong opinions on this because, as people who have been watching my videos for a while would know, I used to, before this happened, spend a lot of time in a service truck driving on the roads, and so dealing with other drivers and their habits was something I had to put up with on a daily basis, and it actually gets kind of irritating after a while and whatnot. And so I get to observe things a lot on the road, and then also anyone who's been watching knows that I'm a big fan of, doing a little bit of research and finding news blogs and news articles from various sources to validate or invalidate whatever point that I happen to attempt to be validating or invalidating at that particular moment. So I did a little research on this and found, I think, 3 or 4 good articles on the subject. Well, I thought they were good articles on the subject anyway. You are, of course, entitled to your opinion. And what it basically boils down to for me is I still don't understand how anyone can deny that using a cell phone or dialing a cell phone, or worse yet, fucking forbid texting while driving, is no less dangerous than just driving. And that just kind of boggles my mind, because there have been brief times in a moment of weakness I've answered my cell phone while driving, and had times where I've looked up and went, shit, swerved back into my lane, stupid shit, because I was looking at my phone like a dumbass. And so, I try not to engage in that particular behavior, because it, to me, has already proven itself to be dangerous, because normally I am a very good driver. Hate to sound conceited, but sorry, I am. I've spent a lot of hours behind the wheel, and I'm quite skilled at driving. And so for me to notice that whenever I have a cell phone in my hand, my driving becomes less skillful, it's kind of an indicator for me, but most people really aren't that observant. And it's just, I can't count the number of times on the road that I've been in my service van on the highway going to a service call, and I will be watching those around me on the highway, because just after a while you can develop a sense for which types of vehicles are going to do something stupid. And it's not even necessarily a certain, like an SUV or a minivan, although I will admit most minivans tend to do the stupidest shit on the road because they're usually driven by dingbats. But that's a stereotype. I'm not going to deny that, but then again, my experience on the road validates that stereotype for me, that anytime a minivan does something stupid on the road, when I pass them, it's usually driven by some, to use a stereotyping term, some soccer mom, or worse yet, some young, early 20s bimbette with a kid in the back seat, which just scares the living shit out of me sometimes. But I oftentimes witness, I'll look over from my elevated position in my service van and see someone texting while they're driving, and just for fun, I'll keep an eye on that person, and sure enough, eventually they will swerve or have to brake check or do something to avoid an accident that they were about to cause. And it just baffles my mind that people would still be denying that texting is dangerous while driving. And like, there's a guy I know who is like, well, it's not dangerous because I don't even look at my phone while I'm doing it. And I'm like, you're still forgetting the fact that you're devoting attention to, even more attention than you would be if you just look at the damn phone, you're devoting attention to finding the right letter and blah, blah, blah while you're driving. And that's attention that should be focused on the road, because recently I've been trying not to drive as much as possible because of this, but when I do have to drive, I'm basically driving with one hand. And when you have to drive with only one hand, it's actually a lot harder than when you just drive, everyone every now and again just drives with one hand, but then you don't realize how much you use your second hand until you actually can't. And so that's another example that's been given to me very, very vividly lately, as I'm forced to use one hand while driving, and it does make things a little bit more difficult, because then you have to calculate things a little more closely than you were with when you had two hands. You're like, well, shit, now I've got to do this, do that, do that. Anyway, but it's the same thing when you got a cell phone in your hand, you're driving with one hand on the wheel, and then you're distracted as well. You know, me driving with one hand at the moment, I am concentrating very hard on what I'm doing, because I realize that I don't have that second hand to help control the vehicle. So that's basically the points that I have to bring up. Is anyone that says it's not dangerous is basically in denial or a fucking idiot, because I can't see anyone having valid reason to say it's not dangerous when the data pretty much proves that it is dangerous, as dangerous, if not more so, than driving drunk, which is actually kind of scary, considering my stepbrother was killed by a drunk driver, so I have pretty strong opinions on that, you might imagine. That's pretty much all I have to say. Once again, that was rant requested by PsychoKitten67, link down there, and I just bought a new video game earlier today, so I'm going to go play that for a while. Peace.